Broadcast Center in Los Angeles. This is KCAL 9 News at 9.
Welcome back. I'm Juan Fernandez.
And I'm Sharon Tay.
Well, tomorrow, President Trump and Vice President Pence head to Capitol Hill in a push to get the government back open while getting billions for the border wall. It'll be a working lunch with Republican leaders. Then the president will meet with a group of bipartisan congressional leaders at the White House.
But tonight, everyone is talking about the president's address from the Oval Office. He called the situation at the border, quote, a humanitarian crisis and a crisis of the heart and a crisis of the soul. But the Democrats dispute that. Natalie Brand begins our coverage with both sides of the issue.
My fellow Americans,
President Trump took to the airwaves Tuesday night to make his case for a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled, illegal migration.
The president's first Oval Office address comes 2.5 weeks into a partial shutdown of the federal government.
Law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall.
In his speech, the president did not declare a national emergency over immigration, but said a crisis has developed at the border.
This is a choice between right and wrong, justice and injustice. This is about whether we fulfill our sacred duty to the American citizens we serve.
The president's address was followed by a response from Democratic leaders. They've said they will not negotiate with the White House until the government has been reopened.
President Trump must stop holding the American people hostage, must stop manufacturing a crisis, and must reopen the government.
We don't govern by temper tantrum. No president should pound the table and demand he gets his way, or else the government shuts down.
The president plans to continue campaigning for a wall with a visit to the southern U.S. border on Thursday. Natalie Brand, the White House.
All right, the White House confirms the president is planning to meet with Democratic leaders tomorrow to continue negotiations. But first, let's go to breaking news. Something's happening in Redondo Beach. Stu Mendel is over it. Stu, what's going on?
Well, we know it's a shots fired call. We know that there's no officers injured involved in this at all. This is happening in the Redondo Beach area. There's going to be Avenue C and Esplanade. It's right up at the shoreline. Right there, we believe that's going to be a victim, not a suspect, being placed into an ambulance. Now, officers from Redondo Beach arriving here at this location. Right now, we're still trying to sort out all the information on why the officers were out here. But when they did arrive out here, one of the first things they did say was shots fired. They did have one victim that we saw right there being placed into an ambulance. There was also some talk about a home that they had to clear. So they were happened inside one of these homes that we see right there. Officers from Redondo Beach still here on scene. Redondo Fire taking that one person to the hospital. As we understand it, no outstanding suspects at this time. No officers injured. Live in Sky 9 over the Redondo Beach area. I'm Stu Mendel. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks so very much. Now more to President Trump address to the nation earlier tonight. The larger question is there truly a crisis at the border? Jeff Pegues fact checks it by the number.
We have an absolute crisis.
To back up their argument that there's a national security crisis at the southern border, administration officials, including the vice president, have repeated the false claim that terrorists are pouring in.
Nearly 4,000 known or suspected terrorists were apprehended attempting to come into the United States.
Nearly 4,000 known or suspected terrorists come into our country illegally.
But in 2017, the State Department concluded that there was no credible evidence of international terrorists crossing the southern border. The president has also said that 17,000 criminals have been apprehended at the southern border in the last year.
17,000 criminals trying to get across the border. 17,000.
But in reality, just 6,000 were caught by Border Patrol, while an additional 10,000 were detained at airports and other ports of entry.
At some point, you have to question why we see repeated mistakes from very senior officials.
David LePan was a top official in the Department of Homeland Security during the first year of the Trump administration.
Do you think that the administration is misleading the public?
I think they are.
However, there is evidence supporting the administration's claim of a humanitarian crisis at the border. A record number of families with children have been apprehended, severely stretching Border Patrol resources. Many Democrats say that they would support increased funding to deal with that problem, but only if the wall wasn't included. Jeff Pegues, Washington.
And as you saw there, that was Jeff Pegues reporting. Tonight, he also tells us the president said 90% of heroin filters into the U.S. from the southern border. The Washington Post reports most imported heroin comes through legal points of entry.
New tonight, almost half of the Food and Drug Administration are off the job due to the shutdown. FDA workers think this could have deadly consequences. Furloughed FDA staffers say they believe the agency is doing the best it can during the shutdown, but there are fears the longer it goes, the more likely Americans could be more at risk. The FDA commissioner says the agency is working to perform critical functions, and the focus is on consumer protection. However, he admits a good deal of routine agency and crucial review work has slowed down.
Well, it's not just federal workers and contractors feeling the pinch. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal reports the Justice Department's bankruptcy trustees are delaying payments from collapsed companies. Former workers and other creditors who weren't paid during the final days of the companies who went bankrupt aren't getting paid. So, new tonight, some furloughed workers are taking to the streets, calling for an end to the shutdown. Dozens turned out for this rally at the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia today, calling for an end to the 18-day shutdown so they can go back to work.
Well, the shutdown is also causing a roadblock for a lot of people who want to get married. The Marriage Bureau at D.C. Superior Court is closed until funding resumes. Now, this means people can't get marriage licenses. Only part of the D.C. court system is being funded, mainly the parts dealing with trials. Everything else is considered non-essential. We want to remind you to stay with KCAL 9 and KCAL9.com for continuing coverage of the shutdown. We'll have the latest developments in each newscast on KCAL9.com. You can watch President Trump's address and the Democrats' rebuttal. After a disturbing documentary airs, singer R. Kelly could be at the center of another investigation in 2 states. The latest straight ahead.
20 seconds of terror, a life or death struggle with an accused killer is caught on camera. More of this dramatic video ahead.
And we're getting a look outside right now at LAX. A little bit of cloud cover moving in and rain moving in as well. We'll let you know exactly when and where ahead.